It's 5 years to the day that I checked my student loan debt, and it was £70,983.46. I just checked it again, and £91,544.80. 20 grand interest in 5 years for wanting an education. And just to be absolutely clear for anyone who's not sure, this is how much I owe, not how much I have. Student loan interest is insane. I borrowed £59,119, which is already obscene, right? But even that doesn't tell the whole story of just how ridiculous the student loan system is in England. I first went to university in 2009. I borrowed £6,789. Of that, I currently owe £9,029.66. And I have made repayments in that time. But even that doesn't tell the whole story. Because some of you may remember that the academic year 2009 to 2010 was something of a disaster. Because that year, the Student Loans Company took over the processing of all student applications for grants and loans from local authorities. And as a result, well over 100,000 students were paid late. And I was one of them. I didn't receive a single penny until 5 months after my course had begun, and I simply couldn't afford to go back after the Christmas break. But I am still liable to pay the full amount plus interest. But even that doesn't tell the whole story, because that same year a new government came in, the Tory Lib Dem coalition. And what did they do? You know, apart from opening a portal to hell and trying to force us all through it, they trebled tuition fees. Didn't they, Nick?
I really think tuition fees are wrong.
So by the time I managed to claw my finances far enough out of the mess the government had made for me to go back to university, they decided that I now had to pay considerably more for the privilege. Now, I was lucky enough to get a scholarship, so my fees were only £7,000 a year rather than 9, which is, of course, still double what they previously were. But one of the other things the coalition government changed was the rate of interest. It's kind of hard to explain all the changes, but in a nutshell, interest on earlier loans was essentially tied to inflation or the Bank of England base rate plus 1%, whichever was lower. The coalition government changed that to a more complicated system where most people would pay inflation plus up to 3%. It doesn't sound like a huge difference, but it is. And the result is debt that snowballs. So when I finally got back to university, I borrowed another £32,330. And from that, I currently have left to pay £50,087.09. But even that doesn't tell the whole story, because at the start of my first year, the Student Loans Company delayed my payments again. Now, this didn't force me to leave this time, but it did, of course, have plenty of negative effects on my finances. And remember, a really important principle with all of this is that it's expensive to be poor. But I'm not done there, because in my final year, the Student Loans Company paid my first term's maintenance loan into someone else's bank account. That person refused to pay it back. The Student Loans Company washed their hands of it, wouldn't tell me who it was, told me to call the police because they could only apparently tell them who it was because of data protection or something. And the police told me they couldn't do anything about it and that I should get the Student Loans Company to sort it out. And finally, my MP was characteristically utterly useless. I became very, very creative with rice, Branston pickle and baked beans that year, and pretty good at stealing food from functions I wasn't invited to. I never got that money back, but I'm still liable to pay the full amount plus interest. When I started my masters, I borrowed an initial £10,000, but partway through the year I had to suspend my studies for medical reasons when it became clear delays caused by NHS cuts were going to significantly impact my studies. So the following year I had to borrow the same amount again, bringing the total to £20,000. From that, I currently owe £32,428.05. That brings our total to £91,544.80. Now, no doubt there will be some who point out that it gets wiped off after 30 years, or who parrot the always helpful line, "Think of it as a tax." And to those people, I want to say, I'm not going to say what I want to say because it would be very mean to people who actually mean well and perhaps can't fully appreciate the position from which they speak. But I'll say this. If it is a tax, it's a regressive one. I'm supposed to be starting a job soon at £30,000 a year, which is actually not a bad salary for my sector. But I'll be paying around £125 every month just to service the debt of my student loans. And as of yet, I still can't find anywhere to live in the city I'm supposed to be working in because the rent is too damn high. The work I'll be doing is socially valuable work. Student loans are structured, though, to hit people doing that kind of work the hardest. If you work in high-paying jobs like finance or law or engineering the latest unaliving machine for some evil arms company, you wipe that debt out in a few years. I will never be able to do that. Progressive taxes fund hospitals, schools, infrastructure. You pay them, society gets something back. This doesn't fund anything. It's just money siphoned from me to cover the cost of a system that was designed to fail people like me from the start. By the time it's wiped off, I'll have paid tens of thousands of pounds, money I could have used to buy a house, raise a family, build a life, without ever clearing the balance. And I'll still be living in a hellhole, giving my hard-earned to some land bastard who was probably one of those people who got a job in finance, law, or making murder bots. The system is rigged. It punishes people who actually contribute to communities, who teach, who care for others, who bring joy and creativity to people's lives, while rewarding those chasing profit at any cost. Even after decades of scrimping and sacrificing, my repayments will never even reduce the total debt to below what I currently owe. The interest keeps piling on faster than I can pay it off. That's a con, not a tax. I truly believe that a university education has immeasurable benefits for society, beyond being just about getting a job at the end. But the commodification and marketisation of it has been disastrous, as we always knew it would be. Regardless of what you think about capitalism, it is quite evidently true that not everything works best when you introduce more and more competition. So if you're seeing this and you happen to have been part of the coalition government, or in fact any government for the last 45 years, or the decision makers in the student loans company, why don't you go fuck